Greetings! Hello! Hello. Welcome to another listen-along stream. The second last listen-along stream. The penultimate listen-along stream. There's one more episode. We're on episode 8. There are a couple of people in chat who said they haven't listened to the episode yet. I'm excited to hear what you all think of the episodes. But thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you so much for coming along and joining us for another listen along. I absolutely love these streams. They're so much fun. I can't speak for anyone else, but you keep coming back, so I'm assuming you're having a good time. But I'm prepared to be murdered in the feelings again. Yeah, that's kind of what we're aiming for. Before I kind of hand over to everybody else, I do have one little housekeeping thing to do today. So a listener got in touch and they are currently doing some research into community building when it comes to fiction podcasts, and they have some questions for all you nerds who are here every week, coming along to the listen-alongs and hanging out and listening to the episodes and talking about them with us. And they have some questions about that, and they're looking for data for their research. So if you have some time, I'll be posting the link a few times during the stream. But if you have a couple of minutes, or you want to do something while you're listening to the episode or while we're talking, that is a link to the survey just in the chat just now. Please do help this person out. I love how Camlann is attracting all these people with research questions. Yeah, it's been quite a magnet for a very specific kind of like nerd, I think, right, Ella?
I thought that, that one XKYCD comic, which is like, I think the average person has like a knowledge of molecular structure of most crystals, and then it's like, well, like probably not like some obscure ones, but everyone would know quartz. Yeah, everyone knows quartz. I was like writing Camlann, and I was like, I think that Camlann has a normal amount of academic content that like anyone would approach and be like, this isn't very academic. This is just like regular, not academic. And it turns out that that's not true. And that's fine. It's just important to note your sources and also tell people about cool things. Anyway.
I mean, there is not really a lot of research about audio drama, so I had to do it myself. That's the kind of attitude we like. Like, I love that. Like, I think that there is something very... I feel like that attitude happens a lot in audio drama specifically, being like, we'll do it ourselves. Fuck it.
Yeah,
okay.
Too many people wrote articles saying that like Night Vale was popular because of its connections to like 1950s radio, and I got really mad and I had to like write a whole article about it, be like, no, that's not, like, literally the creators of Night Vale have said multiple times in public, on record, in articles, that you can read why Night Vale works. And this might be wild to you, but turns out that actually millions of people aged under 25 are not listening to it because of it's reminding them of 1950s American local radio. Like, I know that like it's a curveball, but like turns out anyway, it's
I mean,
fine.
there's a few immortals listening to it for that nostalgia reason, but we keep ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah, and also like Spider's George is an outlier and should not have been counted.
Spider's George reference this early, and we have Spider's George. It's gonna be a good stream.
Amber, were you sort of saying any way to make us introduce ourselves?
Yes, I was going to say we haven't said who we are yet. These poor people in the chat are like, who are these losers?
I mean, these poor people who've turned up to watch the episode 8 stream and have no idea who we are. They've just decided this is the one I'm going to jump in on. It says episode 8. Why not start here? Okay, cowboys. Gender neutral. I'm Ella Watts. My pronouns she, her. I'm the writer and director of Camlann. I do audio drama stuff. Angharad, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Angharad. My pronouns are she, her, and I play Morgan in Camlann, not in anything else.
I like the idea that you just shape your career around playing characters called Morgan. It's like Keanu Reeves, and what is that one? Like, it's like Mike or Dave or something. Like, there's a really common dude name, and he's played like 6 of them. Anyway, Paul, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Paul, he, him. I'm a voice actor and I do voices.
We have
Wayne in Camlann.
Yeah! We have an important question from the chat. Is that a D for Dipper hat?
No, it's not. It's Clementine's hat from The Walking Dead, and I think the reason I'm wearing it will become evident once the episode starts playing.
Nerd deception. Love it. Okay. Last but not least, Robin, introduce yourself.
I am Robin Holdaway. My pronouns are they, them. I play Perry. Although when you said cowboys gender neutral, I'm like, pronouns yeehaw. And I'm like, no, I think about it in my head. Also, it's not even funny. I had to say it. So yeah, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm playing Perry.
Oh yeah, there is that one actress who's played the ugly stepsister in Cinderella like 4 different times. I
Oh.
loved her. I don't know why she does this, but she does, and I respect it so much. Apparently, she did an interview, and someone was like, "Hey, this is like the 4th time you've played an ugly stepsister in a Cinderella adaptation," and she said, "Yeah, when I told my mum about it, she responded, 'Oh, darling, not again.'" But anyway,
I mean, I keep saying I want to play a version of Death. I would make a happy career just playing various versions of Death. I'd enjoy that.
be Death. Death is so good. Anyway, so we should listen to the episode and shit. You all know who Amber is. It's their stream.
Hello. Thank you for coming back. Sorry, just thinking about cowboys. Like, I think it's a Tom Scott video where it's like a cowboy goes yee-haw, a cow, ha ha ha, and it just like cuts up to yee-haw.
A boy, yee yee.
Yee, yeah. It's great. Ha yee. A boy cow. Okay. So Ella, I have some like twiddly pokery tech things to do. Do you want to introduce the
Yes.
episode while I do that?
Yes, for sure. Fun fact, Camlann was originally supposed to finish releasing around Christmas. I have this weird habit of writing Christmas-themed stories that come out in like spring and summer. I don't know why. I think I miss winter. But yeah, like for context for everyone, just to refresh your memory, at the end of episode 7, when we came back from Anon the other world, the gang kind of went from like a raining forest to like a forest with 5 feet of snow, which suggested to them that some time had passed during their time in the other world, perhaps more time than they realized. So Camlann kind of starts in like late autumn, but now they seem to be in deep winter. They don't know exactly when it is because there's no internet anymore. But either way, a good amount of time has passed. Apart from that, please check the content warnings for the show if you need to. It's important to do safety and stuff. And if you want to read along with the transcripts, they are always linked in the show notes of each episode. So you're very welcome to read along as you do. And also, just last thing to say, we updated our fan art gallery. Thank you very much for all the people who keep making really cool fan art. It makes us all very happy. And Harriet in particular gets very excited whenever anyone draws like Morgan and Gwen. She always texts the group chat, like circles it. We all get very happy, and I really appreciate everyone who's given us permission very generously for us to share your beautiful art on our stream. We really do appreciate it. Yeah. Do I need to keep
No,
babbling,
we're
or are
ready
we
to
good?
go. We're ready to go.
All right.
Cool. Right, we will see you back here in how long is this episode? How long is it?
It's like 28 minutes. It actually went down again, which I'm really proud of, because the episode,
25
like,
minutes. Oh,
yeah,
look at
the
us
episode likes to be
go.
like slowly going up, but we managed to get it back down again, so we're good.
We managed to wrestle back control. Okay, we'll be back in about 25 minutes. There is a link in the chat once again for the survey, so please do fill that out while you're listening to the episode. And we'll be back in about 25 minutes to talk about episode 8. I hope you enjoy.
Some nutmeg and ginger, the best we could be. Folded arrow, sing to Ralayo.
Great.
Our wassail is made of the elderberry bough, and so, my good neighbours, we'll drink unto thou. Besides, all on earth you have apples in store. Pray let us come in, for it's cold by the door.
Great!
Fall-it-all, little, 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 little. Fall-it-arrow, fall-it-ary, sing to-ra-li-oh!
You're lying.
Merry Christmas, Day.
Sometimes things work out.
Camlann, Episode 8, Prodigal Son.
Hey, gal, who's a good boy? You're a good boy, aren't you a good boy? Yes, you are. Oh, I missed you. Yes, I did. I missed
wait.
you.
How do you know it's Christmas?
And where did you get all this food from?
Oh, but keep it a calendar. Arthur made us do it, and I figured it was a habit that wasn't worth breaking.
And the food?
You know what it's like out there. Those places are pretty much untouched. If there are any survivors, they weren't in the cities. Which means I got to raid the bougiest independent cider breweries between here and the West Country. Voila.
I love you.
Yeah, pretty great.
Sorry, I just remembered I need to be literally anywhere else.
Go on, go. Gwen, come help me with the firewood.
Oh, the bonfire doesn't need...
We're not going to survive this snow if we don't keep the wood burner going. Besides, it's a good way to keep in shape.
Is it physically possible for you to be out of shape?
I prefer not to find out. Gwen?
Go on, I'll be fine.
Yeah, alright. Happy to help. Chopping wood isn't really a two-person job.
I want to be very clear. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
I'm not doing it for you. Di is my best friend.
I know.
If you hurt him again, if you betray us, betray him again, it's not Arthur you'll have to worry about. Understood, Sir Gawain.
Got it? Pet dear.
Great. Finish up here. You're good with an axe, right?
Prick.
I brought tea.
Go on, now isn't...
Don't do that.
Do what?
Push me away. I'm on your side, you know?
Hey, what do you mean?
You and I haven't spoken to each other for 24 hours. Which is a new record, I think.
You don't even know what we're fighting about.
No, But Die is Die and you're you, so I think I'm picking the right horse in this race.
How can you have so much faith in me?
It's not about faith. You just remind me of myself.
We are nothing alike.
Why? Because of your name?
No, I mean you're you. You're so calm and patient and kind and thoughtful. It's like nothing ever gets under your skin. You are perfect.
I'm not perfect. I'm palatable. Do you know how scary it is to be by yourself in the apocalypse? And then meet a group of strangers and know that you have to do everything you can to ingratiate yourself with them. Because if you don't, then you lose the roof over your head and the strong walls and the clean water and hot food and the terrible, excellent instant coffee. Do you know how badly I want to be like you? I don't want to be a princess babysitting everyone around me so they don't feel threatened. I want to be difficult and powerful and angry, and I am so angry, Morgan. I've lost so much. But if we all kill each other, then we've lost the war before it's even begun. So I do what I'm good at. I make people feel better about themselves.
Gwen.
Sorry to interrupt. Gwen's making a feast for Christmas Eve.
And we are humouring his blatant pandering because...
Di wants to. Meet us at the bonfire around sunset?
You don't have to.
Yes, I do. Okay, sunset.
You know the strangest part?
What?
I trust you. I feel like I can be ugly and difficult and complicated with you.
You can. Of course you can.
Then tell me, why do you put up with Die? Because you're not like me and you don't bend over backwards for anyone else but him. What does he have over you?
Nothing. It's not like that. It's nothing bad. It's hard to explain. We've just always been kind of a matched set ever since we were little.
Is that a good thing?
Di and I have known each other since we were kids. We grew up together in Aberystwyth. It's a weird place to grow up. My parents weren't the best people. Violent, unpredictable, cruel. Most of my childhood was about trying to survive. Going from save point to save point, you know. It wasn't really about having fun. I just had to stay alive. There was this kid down the road. He was always so completely unpredictable, chaotic and ridiculous and fun in a way that no one else was. When I was with Di, I felt like I was allowed to be silly, childish. Like I was the kind of person who might be able to have fun. He's my brother. He's infuriating and reckless and selfish and terrible at communicating when it really matters. But he's also the only family I have left.
Cider when we call again. All the
Oh man, this is it. Life is kind of okay. The moon is bright, the stars are beautiful, the fire is warm, and my belly is full. I think those medieval monks were onto something.
No one asked you for a speech, Di.
And yet, I'm giving you one anyway. Everything is shit. The world ended. I lost almost every person I've ever cared about in horrible, violent ways. I lost Netflix, and video games, and podcasts, and Spotify, and dominoes. I can't binge on TikTok because it's not a thing, so I guess any boomers left alive are feeling good about that one. But, you know what I didn't lose? I didn't lose myself. It turns out I am a lot tougher than I thought I was. I always figured I'd be in the corpse heap, you know, in the inevitable zombie apocalypse. Have we seen any zombies yet? No. Well, the point is, maybe the dogs count, actually.
Di.
Oh, okay. The point is, I'm stronger than I thought I was. I'm not dead, and I'm not a shell. I'm not broken. We're not broken. We're alive. I can feel my heart beating and blood in my cheeks, and I'm warm, and my mouth tastes like cider, and I'm alive. And you're alive. And we're alive, and the night sky looks like magic, and everything is kind of okay. And you know what? That's amazing. We did it. The monsters tried to take everything we had, tried to take us from ourselves, make us something we weren't, something we didn't want to be. They wanted to make us cruel and scared and angry, and I am angry. And I'm scared. But I won't be cruel. Gwen, you're a doctor. Oh, okay, you're a medical student, but still, if we turned you away, then Perry wouldn't. It's good that you're here. And Gwen, you came back. You beautiful bastard. You came back, and I never thought you would. And Ben, you're the toughest nerd I have ever met, and that's saying something, because my best friend is Morgan Jones, and she once spent a whole 3 hours telling me about geometry.
Yeah.
You're my friends, and the world is over, but we're alive. As long as that's true, as long as we remember and we're telling stories and we're singing and we're looking at the stars, we're gonna be okay. I think we're gonna be okay. Because that's what people are, right? In the end, it's what people have always been, telling stories and singing and dreaming of the stars. We haven't lost that. We can't lose that. All we need is breath in our lungs and hope in our hearts. And as long as we're alive, we've got that. No matter what they do, no matter what they take, we've got that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Sit down before you fall there.
I don't actually know what happened to my dad. He was in Hong Kong when the cataclysm happened. Communications went down so fast. I remember for the first few days just spending hours trying to get through to him, constantly hitting down that stupid emergency communications line.
I was trying to call my mum back in Arbor. Couldn't get through either. But her name showed up on the list of the dead. Day 3.
I saw my brother die. Right in front of me.
Me too.
Family were in Portsmouth. They didn't show up on the list, and I couldn't get a call through. But they were right in the heart of the New Forest, so...
To them. To everyone we lost and the hope we hold in the unknown. Aini, Baba.
Carity, ma'am.
Carity, Ben.
To Gareth.
To my family.
This party needs more alcohol.
Whoa there, cowboy.
Gwen! I am so glad you came back.
Yeah, I know. Come on. Let's get you to bed.
I'm calling it a night too. Might even get some sleep.
Hope springs eternal.
What is it this time?
Nights, mostly. Men on horseback.
That's worrying.
It could just be bad dreams.
It could be.
Night, Gwen.
Night, Morgan.
I'm going to double check the perimeter, just in case.
Are you sure that's a good idea? You've been drinking too.
Apple juice. I'm still not entirely convinced the prodigal son's miraculous return isn't some kind of trap.
You think he's working for Arthur?
It wouldn't be the first time. You're welcome to join me, if you'd like.
No, thanks. I want to stay here for a bit longer. Look at the stars.
All right. Night, Guinevere.
Good night. Good idea.
Oh, I think something died in my mouth.
It lives. Morning, handsome. Here's the head.
Tea's ready. Here.
Thanks, Bear. Wayne, I think I'm gonna die.
Oh, let me have a look at you. Well, I'm not a doctor, but I think the prognosis is good. You're gonna be fine.
No, do I have to?
Knights! Knights coming down the shroud!
Is that Gwen?
Knights! The knights are here!
I fucking knew it!
Whoa, Perry, calm down!
This isn't my fault!
Stop fucking lying to me!
What are you gonna do with that thing in here, huh? Make a pull-up bar?
Both of you, calm down. We have bigger problems. Gwen, how long do we have?
Minutes, if that. They were on horses galloping through the snow, kicking it up like water.
Okay, Di, Morgan, Gwen, get upstairs and hide now. Gwen, you're with me.
Hamina. And what exactly are we doing?
Creating a distraction, unless you want to just stand there looking pretty.
They have all the fun. As if.
Di, come on!
This is all my fault. If I hadn't lit that stupid fire, then they wouldn't have known where to find us, and now they have, and they're going to take us back, and I can't.
Di Thomas, look at me. You are not going to do Arthur's work for him. You are not going to panic, and you are not going to give up. Do you trust me? Di, do you trust me?
Yes.
Then trust me to protect you now. No one's going anywhere.
They're here!
Please don't die again.
I won't.
What's happening?
I don't know, I can't hear anything.
Are they actually going to use those swords?
Yes.
Exactly how dangerous are these people?
Dangerous enough. What are Gwen and Perry doing?
Talking. Arthur's at the front, on a white horse like an arsehole. They've got banners now. Blue and red with... Are those supposed to be crowns? They look like a bunch of larpers.
That's what they are, basically.
What's a larper?
Nerds who dress up and pretend to be elves and shit in the woods. It's actually pretty fun. It's just...
Wait, I think something's happening.
Morgan, where's Camlann?
What?
The dagger. Morgan, where's the dagger?
I left it downstairs. Di, they're coming down the path. Gwen and Perry are shouting something. Fuck, I think they've seen us.
I was supposed to hide you. That's why I let you. Morgan!
Okay, alright, okay. Morgan, can you hear me? Morgan!
There's so much blood.
She's not breathing. Die. I need you to put pressure on the wound. We need to try and stop her breathing.
She's not. Why isn't she breathing?
Die. Focus. Just put your hands here and press down. You haven't lost her yet.
What do we do?
Just stay calm. Oh God, your heart stopped beating. Die. What's going on? Die.
Morgan, wake up, Morgan.
Die. I need you to calm down. Morgan. What happened? Die. Where is he going? Okay, you need to resuscitate her now.
Camlann, Episode 8, Prodigal Son, was written and directed by Ella Watts. It was produced by Amber Devereaux, with an original score by Amber Devereaux.
Hello! So that's our episode. That's episode 8. Episode 8. I hope you liked it. It's it seems everyone enjoyed that. That seems to have gone down very well. Oh my goodness! I'm glad everyone like I'm very much enjoying the Team Perry versus Team Gwen in the chat right now. That's rather wonderful.
Team Gwen.
Team Gwen.
Team Perry.
But do you know what? This is what we've talked about this in previous streams, where a lot of the time our wonderful actors ended up slightly turning against their own characters. Where if everyone had a moment where they were like, "Oh my god, my character's an asshole," and it's like, no, everyone has reasons for doing what they're doing. They're all good people. They just make mistakes. But yay, very happy that you liked the episode. Yeah.
Like is an interesting word.
Well, yes, that's true. Very glad that you all reacted to the episode in fun ways. Poor Morgan. So yeah, I like it when characters are assholes. Speaking of which, so we got Gwen back. That's good. He's here. He's alive. Everything's fine.
He can take advice sometimes when it suits him.
To be honest, I don't see that it'll ever really come up, but I actually in my headcanon for the show that I wrote is I don't think that Gwen did take the sash. I think he gave it back. He changed the story. But because he changed the story, the Green Knight spared him. like because this Gawain is different to Sir Gawain. And one of those ways is that he really, really wanted to prove that he wouldn't lie and that he had the courage to play the game fairly and that he wouldn't cheat. Like for once, Gawain wouldn't cheat. Yeah, like but the axe came down on the radio and we did a like uh-oh gotcha moment because
We
the
really
gang...
enjoyed Paul's performance.
Well, we had this whole thing where we were talking about during the housekeeping where I was like, I'm not sure that it's appropriate for me to come in and be like, hi, after we killed Gawain. And so I was trying to figure out a way to do it. And then I was like, oh, this would be really funny. So I made myself happy. But I did say, and Paul pointed this out when the episode came out, I said I enjoyed his performance throughout the series. I didn't say that episode 5 was where it ended. And I did enjoy Paul's performance throughout the series, including episode 8. So Paul is the only singer. Yes, you were right. The axe came down on the radio. I am saying that. Paul is the only character in the series who got to sing with musical accompaniment.
Yes.
Robin and Tobias had to go it alone.
Yeah, the bad karaoke singer gets the backing music. I thought that was funny.
And you got to sing in English.
That scene was so difficult to edit. That's the like it's
Really?
weird. Yeah, like just because first it's such a slow scene, but like it's this like slow revealing of something really big, right? It's not like it's not like the end when the sudden thing happens. It's more like it's this slow revealing of stuff that's happening, and then like obviously you've got this song in the middle, and it for in like audio terms it goes on for a very long time. So in the end, and I was just kind of like, right, when we recorded Paul, it wasn't to a click track, it wasn't to any kind of key at all, and I was kind of basically the reason it happened was that I couldn't figure out the melody and I got bored. So I was just like, you know what, I'll do it live and I'll play piano alongside Paul and just record that straight to the episode. So it worked out really well. I think it sounds great. I think it's a really, really good opening.
I think it sounds great. Like and it's sorry, you go, Paul.
Oh no, I was just interested how you simulated the distance, because obviously the room we recorded in, there wasn't a lot of space for me to walk in, and it was like 1 or 2 minutes of straight up singing, so it was like really slow, gradual, like taking a step every 15 seconds, you know.
It was more like I kind of. If you listen back to the episode with headphones, like basically the way it works with the reverb is that I think it's over in the right headphone, and it's sort of far away. And as Gawain gets closer, it gradually moves more into the center of the field, so it does sound like Paul is that Gawain is getting closer. And then like the only bit where I was a bit like, I'm not sure this works, is the folded all bits where I just added in a load of footsteps to make it sound like Gawain was dancing, kinda.
I mean, I think like so there's two things, or several things. So one of them is oh no, Ollie, no. Taking an axe to the radio is BBC producer slang for cuts to the audio drama departments. No. So several things. First of all, feel like you missed the chance to have him sing in Scots Gaelic. I really want to make Paul sing in Scots Gaelic if we do a second series.
Well,
Paul, you're only finding out about this now.
Yeah, but actually, no joke, a couple days ago I did record a song in a hymn in Scots Gaelic for a different thing.
Yeah!
I don't know if I did it well because I've not gotten feedback on it yet. I was just copying an actual Scots Gaelic singer and speaker as they did it. But if it's
that
good,
would be rad.
we'll find out for better or worse soon enough.
We will see. Like a flicker behind the curtain is Gawain across various drafts of Camlann has been both English and Scottish because Sir Gawain, the medieval fictional character, is presented as both English and Scottish. So like if you dig into the Arthuriana, like his family are from Orkney, and so you can kind of go in and be like, oh, okay, right, like, yeah, like, I think it makes sense for him to be Scottish. But he's also like Gawain and the Green Knight, the poem, the medieval poem, is an English poem, and that version of the story, Gawain and the Green Knight, is an English story. So that's why it was originally the Gower Wassail, because I wanted to bring in some of the West Country stuff, because that's where my family are from, and also the West Country, like Somerset, Cornwall, are like very rich places for Arthurian legend. Obviously, we have like Tintagel and Glastonbury Tor, and also just generally speaking for like Brittonic cultures, like that whole kind of arc, that crescent from like Wales through the West Country and then into Brittany, is where like lots of Brittonic peoples are. The reason that Somerset and Cornwall and like the West Country has the accent it has is because it's influenced by sounds from Welsh, like, so like the air sound in Welsh, like the long E, is the same kind of air sound that you might get in like Somerset, etc. But anyway, but then I found out, like, whilst we were like talking about like whilst we were talking about casting, that in recent years, Scotland has started growing more and more orchards, and along with growing more and more orchards, has taken the culture of wassailing from the West Country, which is obviously like a big orchard growing part of the country. And now in Scotland, you get quite a few Scottish orchards wassailing at the end of the year. And I thought that was really nice, and I liked the idea that our Gawain might have like learned wassailing and like wassailing songs in Scotland from kind of like orchards and cider breweries up in the north. Yes, that's an info dump. Anyway, this is fun because someone pointed out that like we did let Paul out of the room. This was actually the first scene that Paul got to record with Tobias in person, and it was actually I felt like it was a really nice moment for you guys as actors to see you, like, literally when Gawain approaches like Di, like Paul said, he kind of walked slowly across the room, but he basically like sang at Tobias in this like very small studio, and then they hugged, and like that was their first scene like in person together, not on the radio. So how was that to record for you, Paul?
Well, it was just obviously Tobias was very thoughtful. He was like, you okay with a hug? Yeah, I'm okay with a hug. We just kind of worked it out. We figured out how we were going to kind of time I think he said, like, I think we split it into 3 sections where there's like the far away version where Gawain hasn't seen the fire yet, or hasn't seen Di yet, or maybe or maybe just Di hasn't noticed
because
yet.
he's coming through like the forest, so there's the track, but then there's the forest that's down the hill and up the hill, and basically at the start when Gawain's singing, and I remember directing you to do this, you're kind of like lifting your legs and climbing over like fallen trees and like getting through branches and leafy stuff and all of this like overgrown kind of greenery before you're actually able to see Di. You can probably see the smoke of the fire, but not the fire itself, and definitely not Di.
Which is very impressive, because for viewers who don't know, the studio space we recorded in, very small. Paul, very tall. So it was pretty impressive work.
Well, thank you.
Is that why you locked him in a different room?
No, I didn't. No.
Tame the beast. But,
Look, Paul could have left that room at any time.
So you say. I'm allergic to cats, remember? I need to keep a fair distance away.
Yeah, you were in there for your own safety, actually. Paul.
Decontaminated, hygienic room. So yeah, because Gawain was, I think the idea was like Gawain had been singing the wassail to himself for quite a while just on the trail. So there's that, and then there's the second part when, Di notices Gawain, Gawain notices Di. Obviously, they're both very happy about this development. Kind of got a bit more cheerful, add a bit more like exuberance to it, I guess. And then the third bit when I think I physically did a twirl on the kind of final line or something, which again, difficult in such a small room, and I think I was holding a glass bottle, like a bottle of Iron Brew or something at the time.
Oh yeah. There was a lot of Iron Brew in this episode.
Oh yes.
And despite my lack of singing skills, tried to add some kind of vibrato or whatever you call it to the last line, and a bit of a laugh. And I think that was roughly the process, and it was different for me, but it was good. Yeah.
It was really lovely. And it was nice because that little opening from Dai is just the one line. Most of Dai's speeches we recorded separately, all in a row, but this one we said to Tobias, like, we wanted to kind of get him having the emotion of being happy about getting Gwaine back, and so we wanted him to record like that sentence just after this. And there was like this really sweet, like slightly silly, everyone like a little bit kind of like we said, like really funny thing to watch of like poor Paul having to navigate the studio. And so everyone's like a little bit giggly and happy, and like there was this real warmth to that performance. And like kind of what we described and what we imagined is that Gwaine is at first kind of singing to himself, because God bless him, he's been trekking for like hundreds of miles. He has to keep his morale up somehow. But then
500 miles. I would walk 500 miles.
Straight up, like literally, like I mean, there will be again, I don't know how much this will really come out of the show, but like Gwaine, like the Alps that he was in, I mean, he was in the other world. He was in a magical kind of version of reality, not exactly our reality, but at the same time he was like hundreds of miles away. Like we skip forward in time, but he's been walking for like a month, and it's been a really, really long, hard journey full of monsters, and so he's just kind of keeping his morale up, and then when he sees Dai, he's just kind of showing off a bit, like very pleased to have finally gotten here and be like, and kind of fucking around. And I love that scene. And then we get the next scene, which is the first time that we have everyone together and no one is talking to Gwaine except the dog, which I really enjoy.
But I love that you've done so far. You've just given the fan fiction idea of what happened to Gwaine in those months, which is clearly the offshoot podcast as well, is the Gwaine trekking through. And also, he wasn't just in France. No, he was in magical Fey France, which is somehow worse than France. It's possible, team. We can get there. This isn't your regular French. It gets even Frencher. That's all. And more bisexual, which is possible.
I mean, we're lucky that Gwaine didn't meet Lancelot of the way, because I tell you what, he wouldn't have come back. But
again, you're fueling the fan fiction writers here. Give them. Thank you to the person who said they liked my hat. By the way, I saw that. I'm moving house and. There's stuff everywhere, and I saw this and I was like, in honor of Gellet, but also because I'm binning this, so I thought I'd give it a last hurrah.
Why are you binning it?
Well, I can keep it if you want. It's a bit small, and I think I am getting to the point of age where I'm not sure I can get away with wearing this anymore.
I mean, I think you can wear something at any age, but it's your choice. But I agree with the chat. You should keep the silly chat.
What do we think, chat?
Okay.
Keep the hat. Keep the hat.
Okay.
The hat.
You can do polls on Twitch.
You hear that, honey? We're keeping the hat.
Yeah, I think I can do a poll. Hang on, let's see if I can do that. Oh, yes, I can.
No.
Open a setup menu to create a poll. Can I do that? Yes, I can. Okay, sorry, you guys talk amongst yourself. I'll set this up.
Everyone's already. So I enjoyed. So then we get the next scene, and obviously, in the next scene, Morgan and Dai are fighting. So Morgan's in a bad old mood. One of my favorite things about this next scene is that Morgan marches out, and then Gel goes to the door and whines and wants to be let out to follow her because he's Morgan's dog. He's everyone's dog, but he's Morgan's dog. And every single time that happened, Hobbs the lion is a stuffed toy lion that we used to plague alert, so that this is Hobbs the lion. He's not doing autographs at this time. There is a wait list. But every time the actors had to interact with Gellert, they'd interact with this toy. So like when Gwaine is being like, "Oh, hello, Gel," like he was like patting like Hobbs the lion.
I was doing the thing with the jowls that you do. I don't know what you call that.
Yeah, when you ruffle them. Yeah. And every time Perry's like, "Oh, go on, Gel," and like lets Gel out to follow Morgan, like really ceremoniously, Robin would just pass the toy to Angharad.
Yes!
You cannot hear that, but like it happened every single time. And then Angharad would just stand in the corner of the room holding Hobbs, like whilst everyone did the rest of the scene.
To be fair, like when Hobbs wasn't in a scene, like Hobbs was just on Ross's lap while Ross was doing like scene notes. It was just Hobbs was just passed around everywhere, which is lovely.
He had a hat at one point, and like he had lots of different gear. We have pictures of Hobbs. We take care of the baby.
We do. We love Hobbs. And also, so like there's also this fun thing, which is obviously in this scene we introduced that Perry and Gwen don't like each other. Perry does not like Gwen. Gwen does not like Perry. So I guess like Robin and Angharad, talk to me about like where Morgan and Perry are at in this scene, because I think both of them are quite they're not in the same place as Di and Gwen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because like there's the hangover from the last episode where Morgan and Di have the big falling out. And so for Morgan, it's not just the fact that she's always thought that Gwen was a bit of a prick because of stuff that's happened in the past. It's the fact that she's like, you know, this is another example of Di making a bad decision and not thinking about the consequences. And I think probably like a little bit of envy as well, in the sense of like, even though her and Di are fighting, you know, I guess she still wants to be Di's person. And that's already sort of splitting a little bit with Perry, and now you've got Gwen coming back, and I think Morgan, she kind of sees love, you know, that like expression where it's like, oh, like love should be like a sponge where it just expands and gets bigger. It's not like a cake where you've got individual slices. I think Morgan sees it like that someone's got a finite amount of love. Our share's going to get smaller and smaller.
That is such a good insight. You did not say that to me previously, and you're so right. That's exactly it. Like, yeah, I think that Morgan's like, you know, like if Gwen hadn't been there, I think that Di would have been trying much harder to like get back in Morgan's good graces, because he would have been really bothered by the fact that him and Morgan weren't speaking. But because Gwen is there, Di can just be distracted by the new shiny thing, and meanwhile Morgan's kind of like, but I'm mad at you and you should be trying to like apologize to me, and he's just not. He's just having a great fucking time and not paying any attention to her at all. And yeah, I think that Morgan does, she feels rejected in that scene. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, I agree. I think that's absolutely where she's at.
I just want to
I feel
cut
like
in.
she's probably doing that type of thing. Oh, go on.
No. I was just going to say. So the results are in. It's produced an 85% result for keep the hat. Only
11 people.
15% voted for the other option, which was also keep the hat. So yeah, we're keeping.
Well, now the challenge is to draw Camlann, your fan art, draw Camlann fan art of various characters in the hat. Cat. Sorry, cat. Oh, look, and a cat. Yeah, so draw your faves in this hat. But also, I think there was an interesting, and yeah, Fifi's here, she's hungry. So I think there was like a camaraderie between Morgan and Perry. I think we talked about it. It's very much we look at each other when we're like, damn it. And because like, I think Perry's also struggling with a lot of guilt and is panicking. This entire episode is Perry panics and just gradually is like, I should tell somebody about the problem. I'm not going to. I'm going to make it worse. But is displacing that. Goodbye. She'll be back, I'm sure. But like when Gwen is there, it's just that thing of, you are so bad for him and we were doing better, and you know what we've just been through. We had to go through all that, and now you're here, and now we have to deal with this too, and you're gonna break his heart, and we've just dealt with this. And I think I'm not sure if it's the jealousy thing, but I do think there's a bit of Perry going, look, I have to clean up your messes. I have to be his real knight in shining armor. You're there, you just get to swan in and have all the lovely time. I bring all this gorgeous food and stuff, and you get to have the fun. You're the fun dad, and I'm here going, I have to, when you leave, and Perry does think he'll leave, he will leave, and then Perry will have to pick up the pieces of Di again. And I think Perry is worried about that, plus all the nights and everything else that's going on. But yeah, I think the animosity is more, I think there is some legitimacy to it. I don't think Gwen's always been the best person, but I think there's also, like I say, that camaraderie between, and I remember you directing this, we very much had us and them. It was me and Angharad. Angharad, are you okay, my darling?
Yeah, no, sorry, I just sorry.
No, what is it?
No, I'll tell you afterwards. Sorry.
Okay. just literally there was us and them, and we had this sort of thing of just going, Di's going, this is a wonderful thing, and we're all like going, no. Yes, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like, it's always interesting. Tobias isn't here, he's not well, he sends his love. But yeah, like I think there is kind of an interesting thing of like whether or not like there is any kind of romantic tension between Di and Perry. This is an ongoing debate within the team, which is to say that Ross is very pro. I think that like if there was, like, first of all, I think right now Di is very in love with Gwaine, but also I think that like Gwaine and Perry are two very, very, very different prospects for Di, and Gwaine is like exciting and fun and passionate and full of energy, and he's someone you want to dance with until 4 a.m. and like that's exactly the kind of person that Di wants to be around, and Perry just isn't. Perry is someone who's going to be like, it's 10 p.m. we should go to bed, and that isn't necessarily the kind of person that Di finds exciting. But at the same time, as I think we've said on Tumblr, like Perry is very much Di's knight, and like whatever Perry knows that they love Di, whatever shape that love is kind of a little bit more ambivalent, but like Perry just is like, it is my job to protect and look after this person. And that is just what my job is for the rest of my life, is to protect and look after this person and make sure they're okay. And I don't really care whether they like me for that or whether they want that. Like, it's just that I'm just going to do it. And so you have this situation where like Perry is just always going to be there. And always going to look after Di, but at the same time, like Robin says, like Perry very much sees Gwaine as like, but you know, if you stay up until 4 a.m. and get really drunk, he is going to have a hangover. Like for me, like an important moment about the different relationships between the three of them is in the morning after the campfire where Di is hungover and Gwaine is like playing and being like, oh, come on, like, let me have a look at you, and kind of taking it as a chance to flirt and joke. And Perry is the person who makes a cup of tea and is like, here you go. And it's like Perry will like take the action and do the act of service and make sure that Di is actually okay. And Di just kind of expects it, whilst Gwaine will like fuck around and make jokes, but not necessarily take care of Di in that way, because Gwaine sees Di as an adult and who can kind of look after himself. And Perry does see Di as an adult, but Perry also very much sees Di as like vulnerable, partly because Perry doesn't know Di's name, but of course Gwaine doesn't either.
I see it as Perry would have the paracetamol handy.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Perry's the pragmatist.
I think Perry Perry really does love, but does also infantilize them, and I think does also need that identity of being a knight because they're not really sure what they like. There's a lot. Okay, in the chat, yeah, a big Katara energy. I agree. I think Perry for me is like the. I don't ship this. I know people do ship Katara and Zuko, but if they did have a child, that's Perry, because you also have quite the serious, like, because I think yes, that's where we get to, is the social awkwardness of Zuko. But yeah, and you're so right. It is the mum friend thing, but. And also polyamory and a functioning polycule can be a solution to problems, but it's not every solution.
Multiple people going, but Di has 2 hands.
Yeah, no, and it's like, I so wildly valid, and one day me and Amber are going to make the magical girl show that has a polyamorous romance in its heart that I really want to make.
We can't talk about this with other people.
We can. We want to. It'll happen. I'm going to pressure Amber into making it with me. No, I have lots of polyamorous stories I want to tell. And I love polyamory. I would identify as polyam. However, Perry and Gwaine are not good for each other. They're really not good for each other. I don't think that they would make each other happy. I think that they would drive each other insane.
I think there's balance there. I think if they both grew up and dealt with their flaws, they would see what the other has. But I think their journey is to learn from each other. I'm not saying that necessarily I'd say that's a healthy romantic relationship, but it's certainly it's interesting. I think it's that what we admire most in others, the hardest to find in ourselves, kind of thing.
Well, like, this is the thing. So I think, like, I do think, despite themselves, Gwen and Perry love each other. But it's more of a kind of sibling friendship thing, which is the magic that they have as the knights. As the knights, they do have this like pseudo telepathy with each other. They can feel each other's feelings. They know when each other is in distress, and they feel a call to look after each other. They feel like when they fight together, it's instinctive, it's easy, it's harmony. Like, it's almost like drift compatibility. They really get that. So like, no matter how much they dislike or disagree with each other, at the end of the day, Gwaine would die for Perry and vice versa. I think I told you guys that whilst we were recording. And so it's like they piss each other off, but they really, really, really care about each other. It's just, yeah, not necessarily in that direction. But I mean, then again, do whatever you want.
How much of it is the names and the magic of the names compared to
Mm.
if they didn't have the names, would they meet
Yeah.
and still be able to get along or not?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question because I think like if they didn't have the names, ooh, I'm not sure Gwen and Perry would have ever had a conversation in their whole
Yeah.
lives.
See,
Like they are.
did we ever bring up that triangle of like we have McDonald's at home, McDonald's, McDonald's, what's the third one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
We
then
have-
orders
They
of
are
black
opposite
coffee and
ends of the
leaves.
spectrum.
So like
Yeah.
Morgan drives up to the walk-in, gets a black coffee and leaves. Perry is we have McDonald's at home. Di and Gwen are McDonald's. Gwen is also we have McDonald's at home. We have food at home. But yeah, Morgan will drive up, get a black coffee, and leave, and not get anyone else anything because I love her. She's so good. Speaking of Morgan, the next scene in the episode is Morgan and Gwen's big scene where Morgan is very stressed, and then Gwen has her kind of like sharing about. Oh, Odysseus obviously orders a black coffee and leaves. Odysseus does that to
sets
piss
fire
everyone
to the
off.
McDonald's.
Not on purpose, even. Like, Odysseus goes to the
goes to
McDonald's
Burger
meaning to order McDonald's, and then it's just on fire, and he's like, well, fuck. And two of his crew die whilst they're there, and then he manages to escape.
Odysseus
with,
can't
like,
find the McDonald's.
he ends up in Burger King.
Odysseus gets lost on
This
the
is a
way
Wendy's.
to the...
Oh, okay. Anyway, sorry. Agharad, tell us about the next scene, Morgan and Gwen. And Morgan, so there's the first half where it's kind of Morgan and Gwen talking about like how Morgan feels about Gwen, and Morgan saying that she thinks of Gwen as perfect, and Gwen saying that she wishes that she was more like Morgan. And then there's the second half where Morgan talks a bit about her childhood and like why Di is so important to her and why she kind of keeps giving him so much patience. See, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, firstly, like, on a really low-key level, you know, her saying, you're perfect, kind of like we've talked about on the streams before, is literally Morgan saying, I'm in love with you, in, like, a Morgan way, I think. Or not even, I'm in love with you, but, like, I really, really, really like you. But she would never really instigate that. And so, like, her way of saying it is just be like, oh yeah, you're amazing. But it's kind of what Robin was talking about before about like looking for someone else for those things that you don't have in yourself, and that's exactly I think why they're attracted to each other. I mean, Gwen obviously talks about that in the scene, which I hadn't really clocked until like I kind of read it in black and white in the script. That you know, I think Morgan wants that kind of like delicacy and sensitivity that Gwen has, but that she's never kind of been allowed to express that because of you know what's happened in her childhood. Yeah, which I think is like is super relatable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, and yeah, like absolutely. I think Morgan saying you're perfect. Like I love writing sapphic romances, not least because I am a sapphic woman. But also like I think Morgan and Gwen are so I find them so interesting to write because they are such a slow burn, but also it was love at first sight. And it's just like, I think both of them know that they're in love with each other from literally the first time they meet and look into each other's eyes. But also it takes them so long to actually say that. But also weirdly, despite the fact they're in the apocalypse, I think both of them feel like they have a lot of time and they have time to kind of like, they don't feel in a rush because it's almost like both of them just knows that this is where it's going to end. They know that eventually they're going to come together and they feel safe taking their time with it. And I think that like, but also like you say, like then there's also like, I think that's all subconscious. I don't think that's necessarily conscious. I think consciously Morgan is like, I'm not good enough for her. She's perfect and beautiful and amazing, and I'm me. And meanwhile, like I think Gwen knows. I think Gwen is fully just like, well, it's gonna take a while, but she'll get there eventually, and I'll just keep nudging her in the right direction. Like I think Gwen fully
She'll
like
get there
knows
when we get married. She'll understand.
Yeah, no, fully.
She'll get
Like,
the offer, she'll get there.
yeah, like I think Gwen absolutely knows, and I think like yeah, like you're saying, Harad, when Gwen is saying like, oh, you know, I wish I could be like you, I wish I could be all like, I think that is really Gwen trying to be like, Morgan, I admire you so much. I want to be like you, and like all of this stuff, Morgan. But it runs right over the top of Morgan's head because I think Morgan is in a place where she can't really accept that anyone would want to be like her for any reason, and so she doesn't hear like, oh, my crush is complimenting me. She's like, well, that can't possibly be true. She's just being nice. Yeah, it's they will figure it out. Well, I mean, if we get to make more of the show, but like my intention is this is a romance, like it but at the same time yeah, it needs to
Yeah.
take its time.
Well, it's like with Morgan's response, you know, she's gone in a huff on her own, and Gwen comes in, kind of bringing her tea or whatever. And I think that's what Morgan most wants. But because she has such a negative view of herself, I think in her head, her initial reaction is like, oh, Gwen's probably going to come in and like tell me off for the way I spoke to Gwen or whatever. You know, in her head, it couldn't possibly be that, oh, like Gwen actually wants to come and talk to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting you saying the thing about like feeling like there's loads of time, because I think that's the kind of push and pull with the apocalypse. Oh my god, that was such a rude gesture.
And carrot.
That's like the push and pull of the apocalypse. Like, it feels like there's so much time, and relationships can take. Relationships
I love how you did it again.
I can't take myself seriously. Relationships can take time in the apocalypse. Like, it feels like they've got all the time in the world, but then on the other hand, you've got what happens at the end of the episode, which is like a very stark reminder that they don't have all the time in the world and things can change in a heartbeat. And so, yeah, I think it just, yeah, I don't know.
No, I agree. That's really true. Like, it is this, yeah, it is this back and forth, which is like, on the one hand, I mean, no one has a job anymore, no one's studying anymore, no one's going anywhere. Like, but at the same time, it's a very, very violent apocalypse, and people will just die, and that's it. Like, and then just you've lost everything. And yeah, like, I think. I also kind of wonder whether that's part of, I mean, at this point it's just psychoanalyzing fictional characters, which I made up, so I don't know if this feels circular, but I think with Gwen as well, because she's like, Morgan lost Ben, and that grief is so painful and has really, really festered for her and really influences everything she does. But she didn't lose that many people. Like, apart from Ben, she just kind of stuck with Di, and then she never lost Di. And then she found Perry, and she never lost Perry. Whereas Gwen, like, watched 24 other people die with her. And so part of me, like, thinks that part of the reason that Gwen is a bit more forward and proactive with this whole, like, connection that they have, and Gwen keeps seeking Morgan out, is like, Gwen knows that people will just die. Like, they will just go away from her. She will just lose them. And so I think for Gwen, she feels like she has less time than Morgan does, whereas Morgan's kind of like, yes, it's the apocalypse, but also I've survived for a year now, and like, nothing's really happened other than like running away and hiding. So, like, you know, there's been injuries and you all have a few more scars than you did before, but like, broadly speaking, yeah, like, yeah, I think it's interesting. Then the second half of the scene is this stuff about like Morgan's childhood and Morgan's relationship with Di as kids. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, that was, I mean, that was really fun, like, doing when she talks about Di being her brother and like him allowing her to be silly, because I remember the first time I did it, I kind of like dwelled on the like sadness of the situation, but I think like from talking about it with you, Ella, I've just found a bit more lightness in the fact that it is like this overwhelmingly positive force in her life, and even after this like ginormous row that they've had, that's the biggest, you know, that is the feeling that will always come to the surface no matter what happens. But yeah, I don't know, it's it is, yeah, it's hard. I think we touched went briefly on the last stream. We were kind of talking about that, like, that sense of burden that is like having to look after Di, and like feeling like guilty because it's not Di's fault necessarily that he is the way that he is, but kind of how do you balance that whole aspect of it's not his fault, but also she's desperate for him to take responsibility. I don't know. It's a very tricky balance, I think, with that type of relationship.
Yeah, I think so. I think, like, I can't remember if it was Amber or someone else I was talking to about this, but like, I think like a lot of Morgan and Di's story is that they have outgrown the shape of their relationship that existed when they were kids, and now they need to make their relationship be a different shape, and that can be really painful and really hard, because as you get older and people you really, really love you know, change, it can be so frightening to confront the idea that the relationship that existed before is going to need to change as well. And so much of Morgan and I's relationship is that, which is a sibling thing, but is also like childhood friend thing. And yeah, so much of that is about like the fact that Dai needs to grow up a bit, and he hasn't been growing up. He's kind of been offloading his growing up to Morgan, who has been growing up for him so that he can still be a kid. And it's gotten to the point where that's just not sustainable, and Morgan can't do that anymore, and she needs to be allowed to not be responsible for him all the time.
Yeah, because I think when she was little, what she did need was the fun and silliness and friendship and that. But now that she's older, like I think she needs like care and love and protection. And yes, she does get that from Di, but not probably in the kind of deep healing way that she needs.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and you know, the pain is that like both of them, they are so important. Like, I can't remember if this is in the script or just the way I think of it, but like Morgan and Di, the way I think of them, they're very much like a binary star system. Like they can't exist really without each other. And the worst thing that could happen to either of them is something happening to the other one. Like, kind of part of the reason for the thing that happens at the end of the episode, even though at other times we've seen other characters in peril, like Gwaine and Perry, is that like as much as Di loves Gwaine and Perry, like it's Morgan disappearing is like the center of his universe, and like and if something happened to Morgan, like that's the worst thing that could happen to Di, is something happening to Morgan, and vice versa. The worst thing that could happen to Morgan is something happening to Di. They really need each other, and so anything happening to their relationship is always going to upset both of them. Yeah, like I think it's I think about it a lot, and I think about we will move on from this shortly, but like I have spoken about this publicly before. Like I'm an abuse survivor, and I think a thing that people don't often talk about in stories about child abuse, I get very frustrated about the representation of abused children in media, because 95% of the time it's like, this evil supervillain who's a serial killer was actually abused as a child, and the lesson we're going to learn from this is that people who are abused as children are all evil monsters. Or it's like, this person endured like the worst possible abuse known to mankind, and they have come back to apologize to their abuser for being too picky and demanding as a kid. And it's like, neither of these stories are very helpful to actual abuse survivors. But I think like instead, like talking about the fact that like a big part of child abuse is that people who survive child abuse don't get to be children, and they don't get to have fun, and they don't get to enjoy their childhood in the ways that other people do, and learn in the ways that other people do. They don't get to learn stuff about how to be a grown-up. They don't like necessarily learn things like how to cook, or how to do their makeup, or how to do the things that like often people learn from their families, because they are too busy just staying alive and surviving. And I think so much of like Morgan is so important to me, and she does have a sense of humor, and she does have a sense of fun, but that is something that she has worked so hard to find, despite like all of her stress and all of her fear and all of her anxiety and all of her grief. And yeah, and then also like Di is so important to me because in a lot of ways, like he's slightly inspired by like it's myself and people I love, but also B, he's like very much the embodiment of everyone I've ever loved, in the ways that they give me the option to have fun. I think a lot about like the roles that each person has in this apocalypse group, and like Perry and Gwaine are clearly like the fighters. They protect everyone. They can kind of deal with the monsters. Morgan is the engineer. She can fix the buildings. She can get us clean water and electricity. Gwen is the medic, so she can do like medicine and stitching and all that kind of thing. So what does Di do? And I think Di thinks of himself as quite useless. He thinks of himself as a spare part, but I think everyone else thinks of Di as like vital. And that kind of leads into the campfire scene, which is that like Di is the heart of the group. Di is the reason that they keep trying. If Morgan and Perry didn't have Di, they would have given up months ago. If Gwaine didn't have Di, he'd have never left the Knights. If Gwen only found them because Di had the hope to believe that they could find other people, and it was worth trusting other people despite the fact that they'd been burned. And Di is the person who inspires you to keep living, not just surviving. Di is the person who reminds you to sing and make jokes and play games and do things for fun because they're fun. And okay, yes, everything's terrible, but we still have to enjoy our lives. And that's what's so important about him. Yes,
I feel like he's like the representation of what art does in society, where like people be like, oh, you know, like bridges and maths and whatever, I don't know, science stuff is like more important. But, I mean, I don't know, calculators and stuff, but like, you know, Di is like in code.
Yeah, protractors things. But you know, like in COVID when Perry's the protractor, and like in COVID
A
when there
little
was the
bit
whole
bent.
debate about what kind of art was actually doing for people in COVID. I feel like Dai's like the representation of that in the group.
Yeah, no, he is in absolutely every way. And like I think a lot about like so I think Amber and I've talked about this, and listen, if y'all haven't listened to episode 7, what are you doing here? But also like there will be spoilers. But like what I will say is like Dai's magic is fire, like that's why he's the bonfire, and it's fire, but it's also fire figuratively. So the old opening speech of Camlann was all about like what fire is metaphorically, and fire in myth and folklore is storytelling, and it's music, and it's the inspirational spark, and it's knowledge, and it is lighting up the darkness, and it is making things come to life. And Dai is all of those things. Like that is what Dai is the spark of potential for everything else. And that's really important. Whereas Morgan's magic is water, and that's why like her episode 2, like the kelp is the kelpie, and Morgan is all about like thunderstorms, and she is also about like and drowning in the ocean, and the might of the ocean, and the mass of the ocean. But she is also like very much about water that nourishes, and water that keeps things alive, and water connects everything together, but she herself doesn't necessarily always see that. And if we're talking about like medieval temperaments, like they are very opposite in terms of like Morgan would be like melancholic and Dai is sanguine. Like Dai is like full of life and passion all the time, whereas Morgan moves more slowly and carefully through life. But yeah, like Dai absolutely represents storytelling, like figuratively, and why we need stories and songs, and why they matter, and that's why he's so precious. I also, just to say regarding STEM, like I think that I mean, it was frustrating as hell to be told that all the ballerinas should reskill as coders thanks to the Tories.
Retrain in cyber.
My friend did, and he's now got a hat. But
but I don't know if anyone else did like the quiz. I did the quiz, and it told me that a better job than being a podcast producer would be a professional boxer for the economy. And I was like, what? How? But also, I'm sorry, is being a professional boxer really more stable as a career than working for the radio? Like, wow.
Depends how good a boxer you are, I suppose.
I mean, I teach boxing, but not well. I do make money from it, I suppose. There you go.
That's cool.
I did do an art of Dai looking in the fire, and I want to do I have a vision of it really clearly. The companion piece with Morgan. I keep meaning to do that and keep forgetting, but yes, I really enjoy that yin yang fire. And now I really want to draw. Circa like 2012 DeviantArt, 2 people in a yin yang like line. That clearly that needs to happen.
Well, they are so twinned. They're so much the other side of each other's coin. Like there's so much of Morgan and Dai's relationship is inspired by so I was obviously obsessed with the BBC Melon, and then as a result of that I got really into Arthuriana, and then as a result of that I got really into medieval Welsh literature, and then as a result of that, well, actually, to be fair, I was already into Welsh stuff because of my nan, but like I got more into it. But one of the things was that there is like one tiny piece of Arthuriana. It's only in one account. It's definitely not the canon. It's not in Mortdata, where the night before the Battle of Camlann, Morgan Le Fay appears to Merthin, and she just asks him to switch sides. And she's like, look, you're more like me than you are like them. You're like half a monster, and I'm a monster. We understand the world in a completely different way to the way that all of these people do. And I don't think that you are like Arthur. Like, come be on my side. And even though Merlin, for whatever reasons, or Merlin, for whatever reasons, has, his own investment in Arthur and Camelot, and he's spent like decades planning this whole state and making it into being, he doesn't attack her. He's not rude to her. He's very polite, and he apologizes. He says, I'm sorry, but I can't. And she says, okay, and she doesn't attack him, and she leaves. And then the Battle of Camlann happens, and Arthur dies, and Morgan's son, Mordred, is the one who kills him with the sword Excalibur that Merthin gave him. And then neither of them are ever seen again. And I just find that so intriguing. I really like the idea that, like, Morgan Le Fay and Merthin, like, feel that they are cut from the same cloth and that they are somehow similar. And I think that that's so interesting. But yeah, so much of Morgan and Di's relationship is inspired by that dynamic and by the idea that they have to exist at the same time. There has to be both of them. Also, in terms of Morgan being water, it's why specifically Morgan finds Gwen by the stream. A lot of the time I like to find like little reasons to like tie people to their elements, and often when big things happen with Morgan, water is involved in some way. So it was really important that when everyone got lost at night in episode 3 of The Landsman, Morgan finds Gwen specifically by the stream when it's raining. She's surrounded by her magic. Yes, so let's talk about recording the campfire scene. Amber, do you want to talk about this a bit?
Yeah, sure. So in the run up to the recording week, we put in, so we had some money to cover like catering for the week. So it meant that we were giving breakfast and lunch for people. And we were kind of like, we should order some drinks and things and because Ross and I get a bit carried away, we were like, well, we'll order some Iron Brew, you know, like it's culture, I guess. So we were like, well, is it? So we ordered some. And I was like, is that going to be enough? Well, let's order another one. I think we ordered. I can't remember. I don't know if you remember.
48 cans. You ordered 48 because I was there, right? And you know, I work with a lot of voice actors, and I was like, Ross and Amber getting really excited by the idea of ordering Iron Brew, and I'm like, I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to be able to do 8 hours of voice acting on fizzy drinks. I think that might be a problem. I think maybe making our actors drink loads of fizzy drinks is going to make it a little bit hard. I mean, and they're like, no, we can definitely do it. And then
I think a little bit of it was Ross and I going, if we order 48 cans, there's probably going to be at least, 46 left after the recording. But we used it. We used it into 48 cans of Iron. I think half of them were diet, and then half of them were regular. But for this scene, I can't remember. I thought the slurring was just good acting. Iron Brew's not alcoholic. I didn't know what that's good. But for the campfire scene, I can't remember if this was like an idea before the recording or if it was something we came up with during the week. But what we did was we squeezed everybody onto the sofa behind me, stuck the microphone in front of them, and then we sort of put Tobias on the end. And says to Tobias, right, when you get up and do your speech, like genuinely walk around in front of the microphone, and then told everybody to be like, yeah, just yell at him, basically, like respond to the things he's saying. But then I think we gave everybody like a can of Iron Brew, told them specifically not to open it until we were rolling. So it means you get drinking sounds, you get cans opening sounds. There's what I don't think this is a take that made it in, but Tobias did like a really big slurp right next to the microphone at one point.
Oh,
very, very funny. Not going in the episode. Yeah, anyway, it was really, really, really lovely, because then obviously you start with everybody singing, which was really, really wonderful to kind of catch together and then kind of carry that energy on throughout the scene. So it's not just everybody singing and then Di talks for a bit and then everybody starts talking again. I think we wanted it to be a lot more organic and a lot more...
Which... like I loved, because I did not script everyone heckling Di, but like that just came out of like we were recording these episodes on like our last day, so by this point everyone knew each other a bit. And I remember Paul was like sitting on the edge of the sofa as well. A couple of times when Di trips over, like Paul literally had to catch Tobias a bit, where like he nearly knocked everything over. But also like Gwen kind of going about like the medical student thing was the thing that Nicole added in. There's a bit where Di says, Morgan once told me about geometry for 3 hours, and Angharad like added that in of being like, yeah, I did do that. Probably pretentious.
Somebody who's so anti-maths.
You play a very mathsy character, yeah. Yeah, like, and it was so, and then Tobias was just kind of walking around in front of everyone, squished up on the sofa, who drinking Iron Brew. And then also after the first take, Amber took 4 cans of Iron Brew and tipped them all into...
This was something we didn't think of, was that, we need to do another take. We need to replace the cans because they need to be opened again. So I think it was like, it was like 4 or 5 cans of open iron brew, and I think I poured them into like a massive tankard. And I'm like,
Some of them were full sugar, full caffeine. We were worried you were going to have a heart attack.
I genuinely, I was like, I'm going to give you back to your wife, and she's going to be so angry with me because you're going to be so sick.
It's the equivalent of getting hold of your nibblings and then giving them cake or sugar and then sending them home. And we were all just like, Sarah, Amber, and just
look,
go.
Sarah was happy. We still had like 20 cans of iron brew left, so we were fine.
Do you know what? Yeah, important note. Sarah very much was born in and grew up in Glasgow. She is like she's a fan of iron brew, but like
she made me like this.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely delightful. And also, what's wild to me is we got that whole scene in 2 takes. Like, and Tobias did that whole big speech in 2 takes, which is mad. Like, I gave him a bunch of direction. And also, like, in the second take, we got loads of interruptions. There was like someone knocked on the door, there was someone downstairs, there was like an ambulance came past. So the take that we used that is actually the one in the episode, Tobias had to keep pausing and then restarting, and also had only done 1 take of it previously, and he did such a good job. Like, shout out to Tobias.
There is a wonderful bit of audio when an ambulance is going past. And like people just kept taking really loud slurps of iron brew while waiting for this ambulance. So it's this like long silence, occasionally with a, and then people giggling. For some reason, everyone's like, "Oh, we have to be quiet," and it's very funny. It was a lovely scene to record.
We discovered they do caffeine-free iron brew.
Yes,
at this point I was
1901.
I have the very boring tale of having gastric problems because I'm queer. No, not all queer people have gastric problems, but queer fitness people, it's like I'm just increasing my likelihood. Either way, having some sort of just like issues with having things like caffeine or anything complicated, and so they had all this iron brew, which is when it's full fat is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's full fat or diet, and like so there's lots of sugar and lots of caffeine, and I'm just looking at this going, if I have this, it's going to give me tummy ache. Doing better now, by the way, on the right meds. But like, and then they just brought out this little this thing of like original formula iron brew, and I'll be honest with you, part of me was like, now I have to try it, otherwise I'm going to offend Scotland. And I'll tell you, it was, and at first I was like, oh god, what if it's hideous, I'm going to have to drink because they got it especially for me. But you know, it does grow on you. It's one of those flavors that even now I'm thinking about it and I feel like it grows on you, and I'm just there like, no, I think I could drink it again. But yeah, there you go. So if any of you also can't have caffeine,
it's real good. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah. No, just that I've used iron brew as I guess peace offering's a bit dramatic, but like I did, I went to like Canada for a thing I had to record, and they were like, "Hey, could you bring me an iron brew from the airport, please?" I did, and they liked it. I felt really pleased that I was educating them on Scottish culture while I was over there.
One of my proudest moments was that the first ever time I visited Scotland, got an iron brew, obviously, and there was a competition like on the back of the can where like if you texted a phone number you could win something, and I won an iron brew pair of lucky socks. And I was like, I feel like I've been welcomed by Scotland. Okay, so we get to the well, actually, just before we move into the end of the scene, which has some of this like Perry and Morgan stuff, I want to talk about Paul, because obviously, like, I think for me, I think that this scene for Gwaine and Di is one of kind of the softest scenes in the series. It's like finally everything is where it should be, and like you get to just kind of like just see Di be very, very happy, and also kind of like look after him and keep him okay, and like also like all of this is happening because of you. Where do you think Gwaine is at in this scene, Paul?
Well, he's had his kind of I guess climactic moment, at least for now, with the Green Knight and everything. You know, the hope is he's learned his lesson about taking Di, and hopefully by extension the group, for granted. And yeah, he's raided a bunch of alcohol. He's been singing his song. He's been getting hyped up for this moment for God knows how long, weeks potentially. And it's finally culminating, and he's just chilling by a fire with at least one person who likes him. And
yes, Gellert.
He's just yeah. And I imagine, especially when Di's doing his speech, I imagine he's just really proud of him, honestly. And the whole, the sit down before you fall down thing. And as we mentioned, Tobias fallen. I think the issue was that I think Tobias was sitting on the arm of the couch.
Yes.
And I think he like missed it once or twice, so I think that kind of added.
At one point, you straight up kicked the
realism.
microphone, which is fun.
So I think that added to the realism a bit, and just he's tired, he's content. I was pleased with the few lines I had in that scene, just kind of having like the physicality of catching him and hauling him off the bed at the end and everything. Just like, come on, you said your piece. We're all very happy for you. Let's get there, get you to bed before you vomit. Yeah, it's great. he's happy for the first time in a long time. I think content that he's proven himself and can reap the rewards now, at least for this one night.
Yeah, I really agree, and I think that this is kind of a night where like, yeah, I think Gwen has not been sure whether or not this big risk pays off, because like it's a thinly veiled metaphor, which is to say, like Gwen can stay with the knights in his kind of compulsory heterosexuality, or he can leave all of that safety and comfort and social acceptance for a much smaller group of people and a much more dangerous situation with much less resources, but be openly queer. And like a big part of, for me, certainly in the intention of writing that story, is to be like, it is not fair that we ask queer people to put themselves in danger to live as themselves. That's really, really unfair. And it's it requires a lot of courage, but also it's terribly sad and cruel that we make people put themselves in danger to love the people they want to love. But I think like for Gwen, like this has been this huge gamble of believing that it will feel better and it will be better to be with Diane and be with these people and not have to pretend to be someone he's not. But he doesn't actually know that that's true until he gets there. And I think that this night by the bonfire is like finally like the reward for everything he's been through, and being like, no, it does feel better, and I do feel better, and I feel happier and safer and more honestly happy and safe than I have, since before the cataclysm.
Yeah.
Maybe even longer than that.
And I think I like to think, with the previous scenes, it kind of shows that he understands he's being very presumptuous that he's allowed to be here. Even obviously, Di wants him back, but the rest obviously not so sure. And he's smart enough to not call Perry a prick to their face. Trying to keep things diplomatic for them, and bringing gifts, I guess, helps a little bit as well. So yeah, he understands it's a tense situation, but I think a few drinks in and he's so happy. He's too happy to care at that point. So
I think so too. And I also think that's a little bit the case with Morgan, in terms of like, as much as Morgan's still pissed off with Di, she is kind of playing along, and I think that's not entirely like a front. I think she is like cheerful, like it's everyone is glad to have a break. In the original draft of the script, after the bonfire scene, there was a scene where Di came to Morgan's room and they had a midnight feast, because they had this tradition that they would have a midnight feast every Christmas Eve, ever since he made friends with her. So like when she was a kid, he would like climb up through her bedroom window because he knew that her family were pretty shit and that she wouldn't be having a nice time. The first year he ever did it was this big surprise for her, and he'd like smuggled out all of this candy from his house that his mum had left out for him, and he shared it with her, and they had this like little midnight feast. And then after that, every year they would always have like a little midnight feast at Christmas Eve, and I would sneak out before the morning, and it was just like their thing. And this is the first Christmas that they've spent together after the cataclysm, originally like Di kind of comes in as this kind of peace offering, and they talk a bit about the people they've lost, separate to the group. But I'm glad that the group kind of talks about it together. I think it also kind of brought us some interesting things. Like I hadn't completely realized that the thing that Morgan and Gwen have in common is that they both saw their brothers die in front of them. Don't know what that says about me as a writer, but like it's a weird thing to have in common with someone. But yeah, I think Paul said in our group chat for the cast and crew that like it kind of feels like Gwen like realizes that people need to talk about that, and I think it is true. I think all of the best Christmas stories are also ghost stories and are also stories about death, kind It has not been a year, it has been 9 months. So this is the first Christmas of the Cataclysm. In Welsh and just generally Celtic poetry, triads, which is to say things in threes, are really important. So you'll notice that like whenever there's a number in Camlann, it's always in threes. There were 9 days before the communications went down. Dai's mum died on day 3. It's been 9 months. They spent 3 months with the knights and then 3 months searching, and then like, you know, they found like it's all in threes.
Big thing in
Anyway.
a lot of mythology, though, isn't it? And I think it's also in Slavic. And being married to someone who recently wrote a book on Slavic, based on Slavic mythology and folklore, she's sort of saying that it's, I mean, if you think of like the 3 fates, and you think of things, and obviously the rule of 3 that just exists for us in general. You set a premise, you confirm, and then you cement it. But then, like,
it's also why we start off with Perry, Dai, and Morgan. It's all about threes. But yes. Is there anything that anyone else wants to say about the campfire scene?
We could talk about
Some of my 2 favourite lines in the show.
Oh yes, is this Night Morgan, Night Gwen?
I was just about to bring that up as well.
Yeah,
the direction on this was brilliant.
I think I just said I needed it to be gayer. Like that was like the whole like, like for real. Like because they originally said goodnight to each other and it was pretty chill, and I was like, no. First of all, you need to make it more gay. Second, the reason that you need to make it more gay, you need it to be really slow and there's a long pause, is because there's this moment where they get lost in each other's eyes and they're sitting on, well, Gwen's sitting and Morgan's standing and they're on either side of the campfire. And in my head, like the reason that Gwen pauses before she says goodnight is she just genuinely is just, her breath is taken away by like how beautiful Morgan looks, like standing like against the stars with the forest behind her, lit by this bonfire. And there's just this moment where they get lost in each other's eyes and Gwen just can't speak, and then she kind of like manages to say goodnight. And they just like quite often kind of get like just kind of caught with each other.
I was just realizing as you say that.
Ankara went right up to the microphone as well. We basically said to Ankara, go right up to the
it
microphone
was
for
like
that line.
The slow build
And I was like
up and
this
the eye
far away
contact.
from Gwen as well. Sorry.
I'm just realizing as we say this all that like, so one of the first times my wife and I we were childhood sweethearts, and it was around a bonfire. I'm just realizing that part of, like when we were kind of like cute and baby queers, it was a Halloween like bonfire thing that we went to together, and that was one of those times because you're talking about the firelight, and I'm like, yeah, there's something about it. I mean, I think we were dressed as vampires at the time, which doesn't help. No, it does. Anyway, but yeah, I'm just like going, it's a thing.
I think bonfires, well, exactly, like firelight is so romantic, and I think like like I just again like I think very much like of all of the various couples and potential couples in the series, like Morgan and Gwen are the ones who they just know right from the very start. And
I enjoy the Perry energy of just, well, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I was saying before,
Perry just like baby gaze.
I was saying before the stream started, deliberately added in the sound of thighs being slapped, so it's much more of a.
Listen, no, and you also say baby gaze. Perry knows nothing about relationships. Perry is definitely like on the like gray romantic spectrum. Like Perry found Dai, and like they don't even know if they're romantically attracted to Dai. They're just like, that this one is mine for the rest of my life, and I'm just gonna look after him, and that's really what I need in life. I don't even need him to know I exist. Just as long as he lets me look after him, that's great. That's them sorted. Perry has never once in their life flirted on purpose with someone with the potential
we have that in common.
But like what Morgan, like I mean Morgan has had relationships with girls before, not as many as Gwen, and not as many relationships full stop as Gwen. Like Gwen just generally is a bit more confident and healthy in her approach to relationships full stop than Morgan is, because Morgan's she's a little introverted, she's a little reserved, she's a little awkward. I think like Dai is a lot better at hooking up with people than Morgan, and then would always tease Morgan for the fact that he had more game than her, but Dai also just cannot hold a partner for like any length of time. Like Gwaine is the longest term partner he's ever had, and Gwaine was not his boyfriend. Gwaine was like the guy he hooked up with. So it's a little bit of like, you hypocrite. Anyway, Gwen is also a little bit older, so she is like a little bit older, a little bit more mature, a little bit more self-possessed. Whereas Morgan, like I think Angharad quite often got frustrated with Morgan's lack of game. Like if we get to the end of a scene and Angharad would be like, Morgan, get more game.
It was so funny that when you first said that, when you were like, "Can you make it gayer, please?" And well, because I myself in real life, I'm a baby queer at this stage in my life, so I was like, I don't really know what you mean. And then we did it again, and I was like, I'm sorry, I just don't think that was gay enough. Like, and you were like, no, that was so gay.
It was so beautifully gay, and it was fantastic. And it's been, I think it's been a lot of fun having like a very, yes, Morgan and Di are the same age. Morgan acts like she's Di's older sibling, but they are actually roughly the same age. But I think Di is a spring baby and Morgan's an autumn baby, so if anything I think Di's a bit older than Morgan. Where were we going? Oh yeah, one of the lovely things about Camlann is just that we have like a very queer cast and crew. Like lots of us are on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, which means that like it's a very fun and safe place to be. When me and Amber, we literally have all of our pride flags behind us. But
normally Tobias also brings
his pan flag, yeah. Like but yeah, when me and Amber and Ross were auditioning people, it might have been Paul's audition, but like we were talking to someone about being like, oh well, Gwen is bi and he's a messy queer, but he is bi. But we hope to tell like a fair and kind story and stuff. And then we were like, we are all queer. And I had this moment of pausing before saying that we were all queer, and then I realized that Ross had a massive bi flag behind him. Amber had like a massive pride like something on. And I was like, oh yeah, no, we are all queer. So
make audio drama.
Well, like the production team, like it's like making electronic music with synthesizers. Like it's trans as your gender. Anyway,
good night.
We love you, Amber.
It's like being a programmer. It's the joke about furry conventions can't all fly on the same plane because literally so much of the internet security would go down if something happened. We'd lose all the programmers.
It's true. Okay, moving on, because we've amazingly only got 10 minutes left of the stream. We should say if anyone has any questions, please do put them in the chat. We will answer them as much as we can. So if you want to ask anything about the episode or the characters or the world or the actors, whatever, please do. So yeah, we come into the finale of the episode. So we have this like opening scene where they're all hungover, and I've already said this thing about Perry and Gwen and their different responses to Di, and then we have Gwen coming in and kind of telling us that the knights are approaching, and then the knights question, why would you do this to me? Because it's fun. So then the gang kind of go upstairs. Fun bits of trivia for this. Camlann, the dagger, is one of my favorite actual folkloric magical objects. It attracts shadows to itself. It feels like it should be a D&D item. Arthur, when he holds it, it makes a veil of shadows for the holder to be hidden in, and that's why Di gives Morgan that. And that's why
someone run an accurate D&D campaign like Arthurian D.
Yeah, no, exactly. But that's why Di gives Morgan the dagger, and that's why Di lets Morgan look out the window, because he thinks that she's safe and hidden. But obviously she leaves it downstairs because Morgan does not like the magic stuff because she's scared of it and the names and things, so she doesn't really want to be around her dagger. Perry, the reason that their voice kind of goes into magic is because they pick up their spear, Roncaminiant, which is Arthur's spear, and when they have the spear, it essentially functions like a magical power-up. Lore question about Christian stuff. Do people with saint names have special abilities on the date with their name in the calendar of saints? No, because I have had to really avoid real world religions because I don't want to take the piss and make jokes or stories about people's actual real life faiths because it feels really inappropriate and unkind. So the logic of Camlann says that like we don't know what's happening with religions, but only folklore and stories works. There is a grey area on this, which is that if a religious figure is also like a folk hero, so for example something like Father Christmas, then maybe like there's like an instance there, or like Joan of Arc is like a good example where she was like both a folk hero to the people like around her, and her, I mean she was killed by the church, but also like then later like or like was also then later like kind of made into a Christian saint. So like maybe there are some gray areas, and obviously Arthuriana is very influenced by Christianity, but as much as possible I'm trying to lean away from directly having like saints and religious figures. This is why Di's name David. Obviously Saint David is the patron saint of Wales, so that name should be a magical name if that was the case, but it's not, because we leave that ambiguous on purpose.
But the spaghetti monster's real, right?
The giant flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes!
I mean, I do appreciate the humor, but again, like out of respect for real world religions, no, like it's you know, like it's I don't want to try and handle that whole can of worms. I would love like one day if we ever made some money to invite guest writers to talk about like stories from different cultures, and I suspect that it'll be a similar thing where, like, much like in Europe you have Christian figures who also become folk heroes, I suspect that there will be like Arabic figures who are like Muslim figures, but also like maybe like Arabic folk heroes and stuff like that. And there will be crossover because that's just how religion and culture works. But I cannot be the person who decides whether or not a Jewish or Muslim figure is or is not a folk hero, because that's just wildly inappropriate.
Somewhere there's a guy called Josh and he's very confused about why people are starting to follow him around places.
Camlann, and also like again, like especially when we talk about things like Judaism and Christianity, like Judaism and Christianity work with very similar corpuses, but look at them very differently. And so, like, as a culturally Christian person, me making the decision of which of the traditions is right and valid, like, is Joshua like going to be X or is he going to be Y? Again, like, inappropriate. Although, also, any Jewish watchers, happy Passover. Just side note, Camlann TCRPG books. I would love to write a TCRPG for Camlann. I think it would be fun. We do not have the time or money, but hey, please.
Has written a TTRPG. If you're
I have. It's called
interested.
Up River Down River. If you want to check it out.
There's also a soundtrack available that I made.
Yes, and it's a beautiful soundtrack. If you like Amber's music in the show, search Up River Down River on whatever music platform you use. You will be able to find it. Buy it on Bandcamp.
And buy the book. It's a good book.
Yeah. Romance of the Perilous Land, I have strong feelings about, but I'm not going to talk about them publicly. Can you tell us if the finale would be a bit longer? No, because we haven't finished it yet. It's probably going to be roughly the same length as the other episodes, so about half an hour. Thinking today, since stories could be changed, could they also be made anew from nothing, like for someone without a name? Not exactly. I answered this in more detail on Tumblr. So the ingredients for a story to have magical power in Camlann: age of the story is really important. Connection to the land is really important. It has to have been collaboratively created by multiple people and first told as an oral storytelling, and it has to have been heard by lots of people. And the more people who have heard the story, the more powerful the story is. So in the world of Camlann post-apocalypse, 95% of the population at least is dead. And you would need to get thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to know your story existed. You'd need hundreds of people to tell your story. It would need to have a meaningful connection to the land. And also it would need to have existed for ideally decades, if not hundreds of years. And otherwise it's just not really going to have any power. So it would be very, very difficult to make a new story that would develop. Like maybe 200 years post Camlann, you could have a story from the early days of the apocalypse, and then that would have power, because maybe it would be something that all the apocalypse survivors have together, like a bit like that Doctor Who episode when Martha tells everyone about the Doctor. If you could have a situation like that where you had one person go around the whole world and tell everyone about one story that then everyone like kind of maybe, but it would be difficult.
But that just makes me think of the Who Killed Mr. Burns, the play. If people don't know, it's set in the future
post-electric play. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's post-apocalyptic future, and they're retelling the story of The Simpsons, but only from sort of half memories. So I love the idea that a Simpsons character you could gain that power, but only of the retelling of the story if it was an oral tradition.
Yes, yeah. Like, although, and you could. It's just, but again, like there is this element of like there is a spirituality to Camlann. It's not paganism, because paganism is really cool. But also, like, obviously, a lot of paganism is based on stuff that is just not true. Like there are not Celtic gods. A lot of the historicity of paganism is based on like 20th century onwards, mostly frauds. So like, I mean, that's not to say pagan practice is not real and sacred, but it is to say that like the actual traditions that exist are very, very new and very, very varied, and there isn't really a collective agreement on them in the way that there is, for example, about like the Greek gods or the Hindu gods. So it's a bit different. But yeah, in terms of like the Mistburns thing, so there is a spirituality to Camlann, which is again this connection to the land. It's really important that your story has some kind of connection to the land. It's why Welsh stories are so powerful, because Welsh stories are so connected to the country of Wales and the islands of Britain, and like the actual hills and the forests and the rivers and the lakes. Like so much of Welsh storytelling, and like in Wales today, if you visit Wales, so many like hills and lakes and like places are named after stories about them. Like the land and the stories are very, very closely tied together, and that makes them in the world of Camlann very powerful. The same is true of like indigenous stories. So for example, like in America, First Nations stories, or Canada, First Nations stories, or in Australia, Aboriginal stories would be much, much, much more powerful than like something that was made originally for TV. And something made originally for TV just wouldn't even work, because if it was made as a product, it just doesn't have the power in the first place to be able to become a magical story.
The story of Constantine, just the king separately, King Constantine or Constantine, as a like, because there's so many stories around it. Would that be
like,
sort of a...
Yes, so that could be. And again, it like then it just kind of turns into a little bit of a Pokemon Battle Top Trumps thing of like how many people know your story. So like the reasons that the Arthurian stories are doing so well is like most people know the Arthurian stories. There are much more obscure stories across like the UK and much more local stories, and they might be kind of happening like around their towns and villages, but they wouldn't get very far because like people just wouldn't know them. And for example, if like Diane Morgan went to America and Gwaine went to America, they would have like the magic would fade quite a lot, because a lot of the people like in that continent just don't really know their stories. And if people don't know your story, it loses power. With the collection to the land, would there be possibility of having guest writer write in Camlann universe with their folklore like Professor? That's what I would love. Like if we ever had the money to do that and to pay people, I would really, really love to do like a mini season where we invite writers. Like I would love to invite an Indian writer. I'd love to invite an Irish writer. I'd love to invite Aboriginal writers, First Nations writers. Like I have a few ideas of like people that I would like to ask. But again, we can't do that unless we pay people. We can't pay people unless we have money. We do not currently have the money. So you know, if or when we have enough money to do that, I would love to do that. But for now, yeah. I was wondering if you have any advice for creating characters. Is this just creating characters full stop, or is this creating characters in Camlann world? If you can clarify for me, I will answer. Okay. Anything that any of our lovely cast want to add? We are on to 10 o'clock, so Amber, I am looking at the time. We're not going to keep talking forever.
Okay. That's all right. I just want to thank whoever, by the way, has already made like a McDonald's pyramid for the characters. I've just put it in the cast and crew group chat.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add, but I feel like people should see what I've been having to avoid. Like no, he just is curled up at my feet, and she's very deeply asleep.
This baby.
Baby.
She's a baby. Oh my god. Okay, cool. I think that's everything. I will give you advice on creating. Send me a Tumblr ask. We're at Camlann Pod on Tumblr. I'll give you a big long rambly answer on that. Okay. Thank you for watching. Ella Watts. My pronouns are she, her. I wrote and directed Camlann. You can find me at GEJ Watts on the internet. And please stick around for the final episode of Camlann. It's the last ever episode in 2 weeks' time. Which is absolutely wild. I can't believe that we got here this quickly. That's ridiculous and absurd and terrifying. Thank you so much for coming to these streams. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Please give us a review, tell your friends, etc. Angharad, tell us who you are and where we can find you on the internet.
Hello, I am Angharad, and I am on Twitter, Angharad_15. Yes, and that's how you can find me. And that's the end of that.
Okay, thank you. Paul, where can we find you?
Paul Warren, he, him, at Never Not Ninjas on Twitter. That's the only one I ever bothered to update. Highland Song game,
It's really
Viewfinder game, dual BAFTA winning Viewfinder. I think it's on sale for a few more
Woo!
days. So, on Steam at least. So check that out if you're interested. And Fallout London, that's coming out soon. I did a whole bunch of stuff for them. So, if you like Fallout, look forward to Fallout London.
Yeah, so cool. Robin, where can we find you?
Robin, just Robin Holdaway, at Robin Holdaway on most things, quite active on TikTok because I, have to keep up with the children, and still on Twitter for some reason, and Instagram and stuff like that. I also narrate audiobooks and do things there, gradually games, but see how we go. Oh, I'm in this thing called Camlann. You should listen to it. It's great.
Yeah. All right, Amber, I cede control of your own stream back to you.
Ella, who are you? Where can people find you?
I already
that
told
already?
people.
It's
Yeah,
very
no.
late over here in the UK. Hello. So, yes. So we'll be back on Wednesday. I'll be doing behind the scenes of episode 8. So if you want to know how I did that massive fire thing at the end, I can tell you how to do that. And episode 8 has a lot of really fun, interesting sound design. There is a scene where there are 2 scenes happening at the same time. That was a new experience. Never had to do
Love
that
you,
before.
Amber.
That's good. But I had a lot of fun with that one. I want to know how you did the ear ringing. Well, you can find out all about that on Wednesday. Week after that, I might have something coming out that I can talk about. But like a new thing coming out. But I'm yet to hear back when the release date for that is. But it's going to be sometime next week, and then it's episode 9. Then we're releasing the last episode, and we have to talk about episode 9, and we get to close off the series, which is a very surreal experience. And then I need to figure out what I'm going to do with streams on a Monday. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming along. We'll be back on Wednesday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. And I hope that hopefully we'll see you soon. So take care. And where's the offline screen? Good night.